Welcome in. If you're new to the channel and like the content I create, please like or subscribe. Subtang is a mental tool. It shows you the way out of distractive loops in 5 stages by capturing the core belief pattern you developed in your early childhood. Stages are 1. Listening your thoughts, 2. Hearing your speculations, 3. Reducing each speculation into an imperative sentence, a sentence that gives you an instruction, and then matching each sentence with an emotional intensity, and then finally, with the emotional notation you created, you'll be defining your real-time stressor. Over time, converting your stressor into emotional notations will clear out unnecessary speculations and help you see the same pattern set in motion in different situations. Then you'll start to ask yourself, how come the same pattern or its derivatives can be activated when there are so many variables involved? Or you might say, all is well and figure it out on my end, what's in it for me or my company. But believe me, one day the pattern you inherited from your childhood would be activated with the same setting as your past and leave you with no choice but walk through. But I'm sorry, but it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So when this happens, I want you to be prepared for yourself and for your company. Because each one of us is a key response pattern to dissolve intense stress. You can think of this as a weapon of your choice, the one you repeat the most, the one you know the best, but over time, the one became malfunctioning, the origin of your distracted behavior. Progress might be incremental, but in the end, you'll see your core response pattern crystal clear, and I'll help you get this information. Welcome again. I'm Ishika Wuzlo. I'm a design director who defines patterns, internalizing complex systems so you can see the conflict among parts, if there is any, without interference. For the last 3 years, I've collected observational data to understand the connection between human behavior and emotions. My research started by reviewing the psychiatric case studies published in the United States, which maintain confidentiality while presenting clinical data. These studies are significant because they highlight unusual and complex behavioral patterns in clinical interviews. So I thought they would be the perfect database to observe real-time narratives at a condensed scale. But still, please consider my findings within the scope of design and system principles. They're informational purpose only and do not constitute professional, medical, psychological, or other advice. Please consult a professional regarding your health and do not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical or psychological condition you may have. Let's go back to these records. These records were significant because the concentric grouping of these myriad stories helped me realize the self-perpetuating drama embedded in their language. When I put together the phrases people use to describe their state of mind, and there were 58 high-frequency, distractive behavioral patterns appeared in almost every one story in one shape or form. Stories were like, the world is dangerous, other people will hurt me, I'm helpless, there is something wrong with me. If I try to initiate relationships, I'll get rejected. I'm incompetent, I'll never get a job. I can't do anything right. If I ask for help, people see how incompetent I am. I'm worthless. Or this is too simple, it'll never work. What a waste of money. It's easy to lose track of these loops when they're sprinkled into our daily conversations, but after a while, when you examine so many stories at a condensed scale, you only see these patterns rather than the content. Then I started to question what was in common with all these patterns that made these people play the same chord. These people had never seen each other, but they were telling very similar stories. Contents such as characters, places, or events could vary, but the structure was the same. I was familiar with seeing these patterns up close and personal as a design director who invented the "let's magnify" game at the age of 3 to understand the unjustified drama in her environment, but I'd never got that dosage of intensity before. I'm aware that these records are considered anecdotal evidence and may not represent broader populations. But such large-scale pattern repetition was too loud to ignore. When I reduced these stories to their main ideas, two states dominated the environment. People were either extremely alert or conserving energy in their stories. We might not pinpoint exactly locations of the emotions in the brain, but a continual state of vigilance or conserving energy made me focus on the idea that the trauma internalized in our nervous system might be located on the axis of primary emotions such as fear, anger, sadness, and anxiety. Because it was as if these people were using each of the 58 distractive loops as a substitute for each emotional intensity. As the emotional intensity changed, so did the course of events. Common emotional intensities were making these people play the same chord. Adaptive behavior is a behavior that enhances survival, minimizes the stress, or influences physiological state to optimize health, growth, or restoration. Maladaptive behavior does the opposite. This is your brain. Your brain has two processing systems to handle a stressor, a change in the environment. The unconscious processing and the conscious processing. The unconscious processing governs by the limbic system and executes by the autonomic nervous system. The conscious processing runs by the neocortex. The neocortex is the higher system in the hierarchy. Before the conscious, your neocortex makes meaning of any change. The unconscious, your limbic and autonomic nervous system axis, assesses the environment to initiate an adaptive behavior to handle the stressor. We call this assessment process neuroception. The output of the limbic system is an emotion. The output of the autonomic nervous system is action. And the output of the neocortex is language. The limbic system processes sensory inputs and memories to activate one of the 5 basic emotions fitting your capacity, such as fear, anger, sadness, anxiety, and joy. Joy is the ultimate state of what we are after. Think of this as a binary code that symbolizes on and off by 1 and 0. So joy is your 1, and the rest of the primary emotions are 0. Although these emotions are off state, your intensity represents the proximity that leads us to joy. The limbic system sends this emotional information to the neocortex. Then the neocortex encodes emotions into precise, clear, and simple 4 imperative sentences so your autonomic nervous system can implement the behavior in less than a second. The environment and emotional intensity determine which imperative sentence to pick. Would it be the language of the cognitive society or the animal kingdom? This is up to the neocortex. In adaptive behavior, the neocortex commands the autonomic nervous system to execute the same code suggested by the emotional intensity and the environment. So the behavior matches with the underlying unconscious assessment process. Let's get back to the common loops I got from my research to magnify how these distractive thought patterns interfere with the underlying assessment process runs by the unconscious. So let's start a storyline over here by putting a little bit of a discredited pattern. In a maladaptive behavior, thoughts interfere with the unconscious assessment process. So you never get the real-time information to execute the code sent by the neocortex and end up with speculations constantly dictating a behavior it was successful in the past, despite current conditions are different. In maladaptive behavior, you're disconnected from real-time information. Here's the emotional notation of the storyline. This is basically how Subtang works. It turns your speculations into emotional notations so you can track this pattern in the future to see how you run your life with a few of the same patterns. In case of emergency, at the peak performance of your cognition, the only language you should be hearing: enhance, advance, connect, and wait, or backward, forward, inward, and stop, depending on your environment. But you don't hear these, right? All you hear is generic speculations made by many. I'm incompetent. I'll never get a job. I can't do anything right. And then your friend joins your misery and says, me too. But don't do that. Don't chat over your common misery. These speculations have nothing to do with your stressor. They clutter your vision and derail you from real-time stressor. Do you really think that when there are so many variables involved in your life, a generic response could dissolve your stressor? Your problems are meant to enhance your capacity. This is where Subtang comes in handy. It uncovers 58 distractive loops in their emotional intensities. What it does is a V-dive. We've been using these patterns from beginning of human history, so we barely feel the emotions underlying these speculations. In Subtang, we reach emotions from thoughts when it should be the other way around in a well-functioning system. The order is speculations, imperative sentences, and emotions. By turning each speculation into an imperative sentence, we are simplifying the noise. We are emulating the same action and command chain between the neocortex and autonomic nervous system. So tracking emotions becomes easier when there are words attached to them. For the final question, why did I create Subtang? Because I imagine living in a society made up of individuals, leaders who focus on the real-time stressors for solutions rather than engaging in delusional loops. A society where the state of the mind of the practitioner is more important than the content of the work. A society that concerns people's natural state in the first encounter with the unknown. An adaptive society that welcomes change, creativity, and innocent receptivity, what we call life. If you're imagining the same and interested in collaborating with Subtang or learning this mental tool for yourself or for your team, please shoot me an email from the link in the description box below. Thank you. See you in Subtang.